Most of the time, excavations don't turn up scary or weird things that shock everyone. Trouble can result from researching Earth's past. Here are 20 excavations where you can find mysterious and terrifying things. Number 10. The Soviets and the nuns. The art of war is about how everyday tragedies in war are often forgotten because of the bigger picture. Horrors might not show up until much later in life. In 2021, archaeologists found the bones of 3 Catholic nuns who had been killed during World War II. They found the bones of 7 nuns who died when Poland was ruled by the Soviet Union. It was part of the Soviet Union's plan to grow after World War II. After beating the Germans in Russia, they pushed them back into Europe, which forced them to leave Poland. Instead of helping Poland, the Soviet Union made things worse for that nation. To stop rallies, this means breaking up their groups and killing people who are connected to their churches. Historians say that when the Soviets took over Poland, the whole nation was scared and upset. That shows how much the Soviet Union wanted power. They killed innocent nuns who were only trying to help people to show how strong and religious they were. The bodies of the nuns were kept and respected, but that doesn't change the fact that they were part of a terrible time in history. People do many things in war, which is terrifying. Something that could change how we think about people was found at a recent dig. A really big head of a person. A man who says he is a historian wrote online that the dig was hidden by the government. His claims are fake, according to many people online, and they are causing debate. Some people think that there is proof that giants once lived on Earth. How do you feel about the debate? Number 9. Stone spheres of Costa Rica. We look at an ancient culture from sorrow to mystery. You can find more than 300 stone spheres in Costa Rica. These spheres might not seem strange, but they were made by people and come in different sizes. Stone spheres can be found all over the island. People have tried for years to figure out what they are for, but haven't been able to. Many people agree that the items were made by people who lived in the valley of the Rio Grande before. They also came up with complicated ways to run their society. As they got bigger, they traded with other people. As they got bigger, they made more unique stone spheres. There are both small and big spheres made of stone. If a few stones were made, there are many ways to describe them. Why would someone make 300 spheres that are all perfectly made? It makes no sense. They were, yes. We don't know why, and we may never know. Number 8. The Mayan lost capital. One of the reasons that many archaeologists seek out various excavation sites is that they may have clues to the ancient peoples of our world. Historians and other experts are interested in finding out more about the Maya culture. They were a mysterious group of people who did amazing things for their time, but then they just disappeared. Even though people left, the buildings stayed. Often, archaeologists find these kinds of buildings. Chiapas, Mexico, is now the main city. It was a small Maya kingdom, so you might not know much about it. In 750 BC, people moved there, and they lived in the city for about 1,000 years. It's not as big as some other Maya sites, but that's not the point. There were places for rituals, practices, and homes for the wealthy. We now know more about the Maya and their history because of new findings. We want to find the ruins of these places, but we don't know what happened to the people who left their culture, homes, and way of life. More bones would be found if everyone died. The towns would be hurt if there was an attack. What happened with these people? We hope that more information will be found in future digs. The Nazca lines are a set of geoglyphs drawn on the ground in Peru. They're very mysterious. People have been interested in where these signs came from for a long time. From the ground, you can't see why lines in the dirt are important. On the ground, you'll only see lines. From above, you can see that they were made to look like animals and people on purpose. You can see a killer whale, a dog, a spider, and many other things. From above, they look big because they are often hundreds of feet long. Right now, the mystery is taking place. How did the people of Nazca make these things? They didn't have the advanced knowledge that we have now. They made buildings that are balanced, symmetrical, and look like shapes when seen from above. But there are also other issues. How will they know how well they did if you have to be up high to see them? The lines were found in the 1920s. Different people have tried to figure out what they mean, but their meaning is still mostly a mystery. Some people think that they were made to respect gods, and that they can only be seen from a god's point of view. Some people say it had to do with culture. Without the Nazca to tell us what they mean, we can only look at them and wonder about them forever. Number 6. Qin Shi Huang's tomb. For a lot of different reasons, this tomb is both mysterious and terrifying at the same time. You might think that a historical person who brought a nation together for the first time would be remembered forever for where they were buried and what was inside. Except that wasn't true, as China had shown with the tomb of Qin Shi Huang. What is his name? Well, he was the first emperor of reunited China, whose name I probably spelled wrong, and he set the tone for all the wars that followed. He died a long time ago, and the ground filled in his tomb to the point that farmers found it by chance in the 1970s. Once it was found, the government and archaeologists set about trying to dig it up and find everything they could to see what lasted all those years. The terracotta army was one of the first big shocks they got. These were statues that were put around the tomb to give the emperor an army to lead in the future. Each of these war heroes is unique, which is what makes it so terrifying. It would have taken a lot of time and work to finish all of this, and there were a lot of statues just like this one in the tomb. But as for the mysterious part, that would be the emperor's own hidden tomb, because the Chinese government and historians from all over the world would probably jump at the chance to look inside and see how the former emperor is doing. But that's where things get a little bit tricky, because the only people who can accept that entering is the Chinese government, and they are very reluctant to do so. They think that entering the tomb and looking at the emperor is a very hard thing to do without hurting anything, so they don't do it. Even from the outside, the tomb with the terracotta warriors is still a pretty cool thing to see. Number 5. Stonehenge. What else could be said about Stonehenge that hasn't been said already? If you know, you can leave a message below. This is one of the biggest mysteries of our time, and it's not likely to be solved anytime soon. Over the years, millions of people have visited this famous place in the UK, and it's easy to see why. The stone building is easily one of the most unusual things you'll ever see, and some people who claim to know what it is. Some people say it's some kind of sun calendar, which would explain why some of the stones are in certain places. But there are no answers to the questions of why and how it all happened. Let's start with the big question, why? What were they thinking? Why would they put in so much work to make what might be a calendar? Or, if it's not a calendar, why is this thing made inside? No one really knows, and it's hard to believe. The second part is the how. Some people have figured out where the stones that make up Stonehenge came from over the past few years. But that only adds to the mystery of the place, because the stones were apparently from a long way away. That means they had to travel to get the stones, cut them exactly, and then bring them all back. Then when they got back, they had to be raised, stacked, or dug into the ground to make the building you see today. What sense does any of it make? It doesn't though, so all we can do is keep looking at it and move on with life. Number 4. The Turin Shroud. Now we can talk about the Shroud of Turin, which is easily one of the most disputed pieces of history. If you follow the Christian faith, you know that Jesus Christ's death was one of the most important events in history. Anything even slightly related to the death of Christ could be considered a religious item and therefore holy, valuable, and many other things. So the Shroud of Turin comes into play. When it was discovered, it was said to be the cloth that Jesus Christ was buried under. In particular, it was the cloth that wrapped his face and left a mark that can still be seen today. But that's where things get a little bit hard. Is it really the shroud that Jesus was wrapped in? When it comes to that, different people have different answers. Many people think it's fake, and it's been called that way several times in history since it was first found. Even a scientific study of the shroud showed that it was made with things that didn't exist during Christ's time. But that hasn't stopped many people from thinking it's real, and that they can see the face of Christ in the cloth. As you can see, it is a very complicated topic that involves a lot of things that no one can decide. Number 3. The Lost City of Tannis. Whether you know it or not, our world has a lot of lost towns that have only recently been found or rediscovered. They are waiting to be found by time, natural events, or something in between. Cities have been lost over the course of history, and the lost city of Tannis is one of the most mysterious ones. This one would be found in 2018, and it's interesting because people think it has something to do with the mythical Trojan War. If it's true that this was a place where hostages were kept, that would be a big win for the people who write history, because there are major questions about whether or not the Trojan War ever really happened, or at least happened the way we've been told it did. Sometimes, a lost city can show how a whole part of history played out. Number 2. The Easter Island statues. We'll move on to Easter Island, where we can talk about the mysterious statues of the Rapa Nui. They were a group of people who lived on an island and then disappeared from the rest of the world. They also left behind a lot of secrets that haven't been fully solved yet. One of the biggest has to do with the statues that have become famous. The statues in question can be found all over the island, and there are thousands of them. So people not only wonder how they were built, but also why they built so many and put them all over the place. Well, based on certain finds and studies of the island itself, we may now have the answer to that question. The statues on the islands are always put next to places with fresh water. You just have to dig a little bit and you'll find them. It says a lot about the Rapa Nui that they were able to not only find all of these fresh water sources, but also mark them in a way that would make sense to them, but not necessarily to anyone else. Don't get me wrong, but what they did was a bit too much. There are still many mysterious things about these people and their culture that are unknown, even though one mystery has been solved. Number 1. The tomb of Romulus. Romulus was considered to be the father of the city of Rome, as you would know if you studied history. So finding his body would be a significant find that could help reveal information about the time that existed before Rome. But this is where things start to get hard. A tomb would be found in Rome's old temple in 2020, just before the event that changed everyone's lives took place. Many people think that this could have been where Romulus was buried, but experts disagree on whether or not the empty tomb can be linked to Romulus or whether or not the brothers even existed. Also, it might point out that it was more likely a place to honor Romulus. Depending on what story you believe about his life, there wouldn't be a body to find. So until something is proven to be true, you should always take things with a grain of salt.